Story 1. Some people come here to take a break. I come here to give one. My older brother shared this with me while we were on a road trip as kids, and he returned from the restroom. I will always remember it because I was surprised that he was talking to me. That, my friends, is the result of the true boredom that only a pre-video game road trip can induce. A teenage boy talking to his much younger sister because there is no one cooler around. Story 2. Saw this when I was about 7 years old at a rest area in Indiana, and my whole family thought it was hilarious. Here I sit all alone on the toilet, giving birth to an Indiana State Trooper. Story 3. This toilet is no good at all. The seat is too high and the hole is too small. To which I must add the obvious retort, your body is too large and your legs are too short. Story 4. On a construction job site in a high-profile place, such as a government building, the stalls were covered with permanent marker ink. The general contractor paid to have the walls cleaned and held a site-wide meeting, admonishing everyone and stating that if anyone is caught writing graffiti on the stalls, they will receive a lifetime ban from all sites associated with that general contractor. Later that day, I went to the washroom and saw, written on the inside of the stall, "Days without graffiti, 0. Story 5. Someone wrote, "Forget the police," and then someone else wrote, "But Sting had some good albums." And I still laugh about that. Story 6. Not on a bathroom wall, but a brick wall behind my store's dumpster. Hot free services for interested adults from a local provider. Wednesday and Saturday at 10 p.m. Story 7. In university, someone wrote, "My mother made me a homosexual." Beneath that, in different handwriting, "If I buy the wool, will she make one for me?" Story 8. Can the person driving the 4-speed vehicle please shift into second gear, as this toilet is not equipped with mud flaps? Story 9. I never saw it, but I heard about it. My favorite bar in my hometown had a cubicle wall in the ladies' room that featured the dick list. Last I heard, there were over 70 names in different handwriting of the men that the ladies considered to be dicks. My girlfriend assured me I was not on the list. Story 10. When I was in high school, I saw this written above a urinal. "The South will rise again." Someone drew an X through that and then wrote directly beneath it, "No, it will not." Story 11. Entropy is not what it used to be. In a bathroom stall in the engineering school I attended in the early 1980s. Story 12. All of us with septic tanks give you our heartfelt thanks for putting nothing in the tank. That is not guaranteed to rot. Facial tissues are bad. Matchsticks too. Cigarette butts are taboo. Please no hair combings. Use the basket. There is a good reason why we ask it. Okay, so it was in my great-aunt's bathroom, not a public stall, but I have had this memorized for 30 years now. Story 13. I was at a construction site, and they had a list on the stall door instructing people to flush the toilet and clean up after themselves, along with some other rules. Someone added, "Any turds longer than 30 centimeters. Please stack neatly in the corner." Still makes me laugh. Story 14. In a Kmart bathroom when I was about 11, I read it out loud to my mom while an employee was in there, too. "If you love a guy, show some class. Write his name where you wipe yourself." The employee promised my mom they would get that cleaned up. Story 15. A portable toilet in Iraq had a fake memo from the commander stating, "Due to the risk of exposure to chemical backsplash, all materials longer than 6 inches must be lowered by hand." I still think there must have been Marines who tried to follow the instructions. Story 16. Someone drew a typical picture of a male chicken, but someone else drew over it and made it look like a rooster. It was a masterpiece. Story 17. Went to the bathroom in the diviest possible bar. My cousin was with me, and she was hovering over the seat, as one does. She finally had to sit down, and when she looked up at the stall door, she saw that someone had written, "Stop urinating on the seats, you sick people." Story 18. After someone repainted the toilet in my local pub, this little gem appeared. "They paint the walls to hide my pen. The restroom poet strikes again." Story 19. Mine is not profane or vulgar, but incredibly damaging. For reasons that should be obvious, I will not use her real name. It said, Sarah Thompson is a police informant. Story 20. The words pepperoni count. I still don't know what they meant by it, but it has stayed with me for 20 years. Story 21. Two of them. 1. Beat me, whip me, make me write bad checks. 2. Alcohol is my favorite anesthesia. Underneath this, someone else wrote, Anesthesia? Wasn't she one of the Romanovs? I saw these written on the walls of the men's room in the Blue Moon Tavern in Seattle, which was famous for its graffiti. The walls were covered with it. Every year or so, they would repaint the bathroom and it would start over. Story 22. In an old decrepit toilet in the middle of a military training area in the Australian desert. I have been with a girl in the east. I have been with a girl in the west. I have even been with a girl with a hairy chest. But I will never be happy. I will never be free until I am with a girl, like the army treated me. Story 23. This was in an airport stall. You cheap people and your single ply. Followed by an arrow pointing to the above message with the word coward. Story 24. Why drink and drive when you can smoke marijuana, eat soap, and fly home in a bubble? If you sprinkle when you tinkle, be kind and wipe the seat. Story 25. Was using the bathroom along the beach in Monterey. Saw that someone had stuck an In-N-Out burger sticker on, I think a hand dryer or something, but they blacked out the B in second R in burger. It took me a moment to realize that they weren't talking about how much they enjoy animal style. Got a small chuckle from me. Stay classy. Story 26. It wasn't on the stall, but on the ceiling. You know how when you use the public urinal you tend to look up? I went to use it, and as I unzipped my pants and looked up, I saw that somebody had written "Look down, bitch" high on the wall, close to the ceiling. Story 27. For a good time, call Jenny at XXXXXX. Do not call Jenny. She was very aggressive with me. Story 28. Some men come here to relax and clean. I come here to sit, think, and write on the walls. Story 29. Scene in Vietnam. Half the girls here have chlamydia. The other half have tuberculosis. Avoid those who cough. Story 30. Long ago at work, it started with my then co-worker's real name, John Smith. Lover. Hero. Sitcom shout. No idea what that meant. Story 31. Jesus saves sinners, with another person adding, and collects them for valuable prizes. I still laugh out loud. Story 32. Here I sit and hesitate. Should I defecate or masturbate? On the wall. Look up if there is a fire. On the ceiling. If there is a fire, idiot. Story 33. Mine was, here I sit, broken-hearted, paid a dime and only farted. Yesterday, I took a chance, saved my dime, and had an accident. This was back in the day when public toilets were coin-operated, and you needed to pay a dime to use the restroom. Story 34. Jenny Hall Venmore. It was written on the wall of a boys' toilet in a primary school. I often wonder who Jenny was and why a 5 to 11-year-old wanted to tell everyone. Story 35. At the Kaiserslautern Post Exchange, my wife makes me wear a bra. I was there around 30 years ago, and it still stays in my mind. I think it is very funny to this day. Story 36. Here I sit in stinky vapor. Someone used all the toilet paper. Will I lie or will I linger? No, forget it. I'll just use my finger. Story 37. It was in a Port of John on a construction site over 2 years ago, and I still remember it. Life is like a difficult situation. The more support you have, the less hardship you have to endure. Story 38. Growing up, it was just my mother and me. We were at the grocery store one day, and I had to use the restroom. As I sat there contemplating life, I started reading some of the graffiti on the walls. One message said, "Your mother gives great blowjobs." I pondered this for several minutes. The statement was almost certainly true since I had heard much the same thing from many of my classmates, but the word "your" made it sound personally directed at me. Then, in a flash of enlightenment as I finished, it hit me. My father wrote it in the hope of making a connection to the child he never met. I couldn't wait to see the smile on my mother's face when I told her about this. Story 39. In the Cave of 1,000 People. By the light of a swinging lamp, Pudong was murdered by his brother, Ho Flungshet. I am certain that it is offensive. However, it sticks in my mind and is the only thing written on a piece of bathroom stall I will remember. Story 40. A philosopher wrote, "Here I sit and contemplate. Should I defecate or engage in self-pleasure?" Top shelf contemplation. Story 41. The single most random message that made me laugh out loud was, "The world is like a grain of sand, only much, much bigger." Story 42. Someone in high school carved my name into the bathroom stall. Just my first and last name with no context. Luckily, I was a good kid who was always nice to the lunch ladies, so I did not get in trouble for it. They laughed about it because they knew it was not me who did it. I still do not know who did. Story 43. The place I worked at many years ago had footprints drawn on the stall door, indicating where your feet would be if you stuck them straight out while sitting on the toilet. It said, "Place feet here for maximum power." Story 44. So I was using a public toilet. In the middle of it, I lifted my head to my left hand while reaching for the toilet paper. And then I saw this. Relax. Had you applied the same energy in your work, you would be a billionaire. I couldn't stop myself from laughing out loud. Story 45. I used to go to this bar all the time when I was in my early 20s. Some guy had written Jameson 1982- on the stall. I saw it for a couple of years. Then one night I was there and it said, Jameson 1982 to 2003. I will never forget it. Story 46. Booger archery with a series of numbered concentric circles below it. It looked exactly as you think it would. Story 47. It takes a long time, but God does too. I didn't think Modest Mouse lyrics would hit harder out of context, unless that context was pooping. Story 48. Not on a bathroom stall, but on a condom machine in a restroom, next to the advertisement for "ribbed for her pleasure," was written, "Be selfish, wear them inside out." Story 49. As you sit and use the toilet, won't you stop and think a bit? The last time I used the toilet was on this very seat. Story 50. Tolkien is hobbit forming. It leads to broken gnomes and ruins your elf. I know Tolkien did not use gnomes, but I still think it is funny. Story 51. In Korea, a sign asks people to throw their used urine and feces tissues into the bin and not to flush them down the toilet. Story 52. I worked in the art department for an advertising agency. On the inside of the stall door, there was a well-done life-size sketch of a man sitting on a toilet, presumably using it. It was titled Toilet Mirror. Story 53. I still think about this one from high school. I didn't earn that A-. My mom's sleeping with my math teacher. Second handwriting. Which math teacher? One of them is my dad. Third handwriting. In a shocking turn of events, watch it be Ms. Malcolm, the math teacher who quit last week. Potentially first handwriting again. Guys, Mel's parents are both teachers at this school. Let's gossip on social media like civilized people. Add me, Fern Plant Miscreant. I remember taking a photo of it on my very poor camera phone and texting it to my friend to ask whose handwriting we thought it was. It stuck with me because the social media username was bothering me. I couldn't tell if this person was trying to say miscreant and couldn't spell, or if it was a sloppy pun using currents. Story 54. One woman wrote, "My mother made me a lesbian." Another woman wrote, "If I buy the fabric, will she make one for me too? Best graffiti ever." Story 55. I worked in a bar, and someone scratched "Let's go Penguins" on the side of the stall. Someone else changed it to say, "Let's gobble pens." Story 56. When you die, you may be able to choose between heaven or pie heaven. Choose pie heaven. It may be a trick, but if not, pie. Story 57. Don't be like a rose whose beauty fades quickly once picked. Be like the wildflower that thrives wherever it grows. Story 58. Gus Romer hires girls for sex and does not pay them. Heading towards Adelaide, Australia. Watch out for Gus. Story 59. My stall said, Beware of Jack Scott. About an hour later, a drunk man came over and started hitting on my friend. I said, "Ooh, you are famous." We still could not shake him. Story 60. Someone writing all the lyrics to Taste on the wall on the right, another person writing all the lyrics to Juno on the left, and finally someone else writing all the lyrics to Super Freaky Girl on the toilet lid. I revisited the same bathroom 2 months later, and there were a bunch of Sabrina Carpenter and Nicki Minaj lyrics written all over the walls and one on the ceiling. Story 61. Some come here to sit and think. Some come here to defecate and stink. Some come here to scratch themselves and read the nonsense on the walls. Story 62. All in different handwriting. God is dead, Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche is dead, God. Nietzsche is peachy. Story 63. I have worked on construction sites before. If I put some of the things I have seen written on the portable restroom walls, I would be banned from Reddit. Story 64. Drink some Smiths when the bottom falls out of your world, then the world will fall out of your bottom. Story 65. People who write on bathroom walls like to roll their waist into little balls. People who like to read these wits enjoy these little balls of nonsense. Here I sit, tired and hurting, about to give birth to another Albertan. Story 66. Pussies unite. But then someone fixed the spelling and wrote, "If you cannot be classy, at least be grammatically correct." I took the picture about 15 years ago, but I still have it saved on my phone. Story 67. Relayed to me by my sister. A scene in The Ladies. John Wayne's toilet paper. It's rough and it's tough, and it is not going to take any disrespect from any man. Story 68. A phone number with the text, "Contact me for some fun." I noticed the number. Turns out it was my best friend's number. Story 69. Here I sit on smelly vapor. Someone stole the toilet paper. Should I die? Should I linger? Or should I be forced to use my finger? Benjamin Franklin, probably. Story 70. I used to draw a graffiti penguin with the initials dimethyltryptamine everywhere, including a hippie-themed sandwich shop I visited after school. I came back a few weeks later to see, "I want dimethyltryptamine. Talk to the girl behind the counter if you have any." It made me laugh, a noble attempt. Story 71. When I was very young, I saw a racial slur written on a stall at a bowling alley. I asked my mom what that word meant in front of her friends. Fortunately, I mispronounced it, so they did not know what I was saying. She asked me where I saw the word because she did not know its meaning. I told her I saw the phrase written on the stall. They then realized what word I was trying to say. That was the day I learned what the racial slur is and why I should never say it. Story 72. This was shortly after the horribly tragic Columbine school shooting, where the shooters went by the moniker Trenchcoat Mafia. In a stall at a store, someone wrote the city name and Trenchcoat Mafia. I couldn't believe someone would idolize them. Story 73. A poem on the men's room wall is worth mentioning here. I read an interview where he said he had those lines rattling around in his head for decades before finally putting them down into a song. Fear is the mind killer. Beer is the fear killer. This beer is killer. Phyllis Diller is a cock thriller. Oh yeah. Story 74. If shitting feels like homosexual intercourse, then I am homosexual. Written above the urinals in my middle school. My friends still quote it sometimes. Unfortunately, it is not there anymore because the building was renovated due to mold and asbestos. Story 75. There was a picture with the writing, "Don't beam me up, Scott." But the letter T had a continuous line that went up, as if someone teleported him off the stall upwards. Story 76. My own personal favorite. I was with your mother last night. Immediately followed by, "Go home, Dad, you're drunk." Story 77. I work in drywall on construction sites, and almost always there is a portable toilet, usually covered in graffiti. One message that made me laugh was one pretending to be a drywall worker asking people to stop throwing cigarette butts in the urinal because they are too hard to relight. Story 78. At work, an A4 sheet is stuck outside the stall door. It reads, "Do not flush. A way to get measuring tape. Possible record breaker." Story 79. They tried to ban transgender people from bathrooms. I chose to break the law and went into the ladies' room anyway. In there, I saw this. I knew then that the government was in trouble. I knew we would win. The people have spoken. Story 80. A sign said, "Do not flush anything except toilet paper." Underneath, someone wrote, "What about my waste?" Story 81. At a truck stop, someone had written, "Only your mother has had more partners than this urinal," over one of the urinals. I laughed at it. Story 82. There was a whole dialogue on a women's restroom wall in my university's law school building about a man's qualities in bed. For the record, not very good. It was so funny I even made a video of it. Story 83. I was attracted to CB, the girl in middle school on whom I had my first crush and thought very highly of. Story 84. I once saw somebody graffiti the koala changing stations in a Chili's or Applebee's in Idaho Falls. They both had angry eyes, and the big koala had a knife. I thought it was the funniest thing ever since I am only used to seeing gang graffiti. I think about those koalas maybe once a week. Story 85. People who write on bathroom walls. Roll their waste into little balls. People who read those words of wit. Consume those little balls of waste. While I sit here and contemplate, I further consider those words of wit wrapped in balls of waste. Story 86. Somewhere on a toilet wall, I read the words, "You form a line, formalize the former lies." I finally saw the truth, something so profound, and it was sitting there surrounded by garbage and stains. Story 87. Knock twice for assistance at Macy's in downtown Los Angeles. 2 seconds later, someone's head appeared under the divider. I didn't knock, nor did I want assistance. The person ran faster than Usain Bolt out of that Macy's. Story 88. One time I was using a urinal and looked up at the ceiling. Written directly above me was, "What are you looking up here for? The joke's in your hand." Story 89. It will be the toilet tennis. The door said, "Welcome to toilet tennis. Look right." When you sat and looked straight ahead, the right side said, "Look left," and the left side said, "Look right." It gave me a good chuckle as it was the first time I had seen it. Story 90. Here I sit, all broken-hearted, tried to defecate, and only farted. Once I thought, I take a chance, tried to fart, and soil my pants. Story 91. I remember a poem on the wall of a public restroom. Here I sit broken-hearted. I paid 10 cents and I only farted. Story 92. In the mid-1970s, at the height of the oil crisis, there was a push for a 55-mile-per-hour speed limit and extensive media coverage around it, 186,000 miles per second. It is not just a good idea. It is the law. Story 93. I was here, but now I am gone. I left my name to carry on. Those who knew me well. Those who did not can go to hell. Story 94. This one hurts. When Endgame was released, I stayed away from all social media to avoid spoilers. I got so close, no spoilers, and I made it to the cinema. I decided to go to the toilet just before the movie, and the first thing I saw on the wall was Iron Man dies. Story 95. Emergency turbine repair kit, with an arrow pointing to the toilet paper dispenser. Note, the plumbers on the site wore turbans. Another sign read, "For a blowout, call site supervisor or builder's phone number. The boss makes $1,000, I make $1, so I stole the catalytic converter from the company truck." Story 96. There was a message on the wall saying, "For a good time, call Luke at 123-423-4234. I decided to call the number, and we ended up hanging out and having great fun together. Story 97. This is the only place in the building where I truly understand what is going on. Story 98. Underneath the basement floor of the medical library at my university is a fallout shelter. It is mostly used for storage now. In a corner of it is the most secluded bathroom possibly ever. Written on the wall of a stall in the men's room is a schedule labeled BJ Schedule. The phrase BJ Schedule is written above a T-chart of names and times. I have not gone back in there for fear of running into someone with the wrong idea. Story 99. Here I sit, broken-hearted. I came to sit, but only farted. And it was written in purple glitter marker and paint, with fantastic penmanship, in cursive, and correctly punctuated. Story 100. On a public toilet wall in the 1970s, my mother made me a lesbian. Someone had written under it, if I send her the wool, can she make me one? Story 101. Saw this in a university library bathroom. Life is like a toilet paper roll. The closer it gets to the end, the faster it goes. It still hits harder than it should. Story 102. Here I sit broken-hearted, paid a dime and merely farted. Yesterday I took a chance and soiled my pants. Written on the bathroom stall in the campground of Golden Lake, Ontario when I was young. I am not sure why I remember it 50 years later. Story 103. I did not see it in person, but when I was about 7 or 8, there was a scene from a movie in a bathroom stall that had the word boner written across the walls. I asked my parents what boner meant. The silence was so loud it was as if they did not even hear me. Story 104. It's Dutch, so bear with me. I will translate it. On this toilet is a goat that will bite your balls when you are shitting. In Dutch, it rhymes. It is genius. Story 105. On a condom machine, for refund, insert baby here, with an arrow pointing to the change slot. Cameras are for research purposes only. Story 106. Jamie was a regular at a pub I worked at. Racist, sexist, just a bigot all around. A total wannabe skinhead bully. But most of all, he was very homophobic. No one wanted him there, but for some reason the management kept lifting his ban from the premises because they said he was mostly harmless. He wasn't. Anyway, we never figured out who wrote it. But it was there for about a week, maybe a little more, before he saw it. He absolutely lost his temper, tried fighting just about anyone he thought might have written it, and since most people couldn't stand him, that was most people. Shouting and stomping around, getting in people's faces, and ended up getting himself barred again. I ended up leaving that pub soon after. I still wonder who the legend was that wrote it. The staff always figured it had to be a friend of his. The funniest part is that they didn't even need to include his surname on the graffiti. Everyone knew who it was about, and he was one of the last people to notice it. A few months earlier, a rumor went around the pub that he was at a nightclub and hooked up with one of our staff members. A very flamboyant gay man who denied it, obviously. But it was very amusing to see Jamie go absolutely insane trying to figure out who was starting these rumors about him. Of course, he blamed our staff member. But as he said, "What makes you think I would ever have sex with you, Jamie?" And that surprisingly got him to shut up. Though he turned beet red before he walked away. Not embarrassment, fury. But he managed to calm himself down. The only time I'd seen him successfully calm down without someone hitting him. I do not miss working at that pub for even a second. Badly managed with some horrible regulars. But seeing a bigot lose their mind thinking people might think he's gay was one of the funniest things that happened there. Story 107. If you see a fire, said the poster in the school bathroom I attended as a pupil. Someone had scribbled out "ring for help" and wrote "fan the flames." Story 108. Toy Story 2 was okay, carved by one person. 3 was heartbreaking, carved by a different person. It is just odd to see in a campground bathroom. Story 109. The future of our nation depends on what you are holding right now. I read this at our university restroom while using a urinal, and it will probably stay with me for the rest of my life. Story 110. Archantena walked at night. Archon saw his final sight. Now the question seems to be, what in the world did Tenna see? Story 111. Someone wrote out the entire chapter of Genesis from the Bible. I even cross-referenced it. They got every single New King James Version word correct. That is just dedication. Story 112. There were a bunch of other things on the wall like, "You look fine, babe," and "Jake was here," and people calling out bad people. Some I knew, most I did not. The one that got me was in ballpoint pen, faded, and right by the door frame. "You matter." I do not know why, but it hit me so hard that day and still stays with me. Story 113. Somewhere along Route 65 in Indiana, A rest stop stall had the message. You do not have to be gay. A warm hole is still a hole. Call for a good time. To this day, every time I think about it, I chuckle. Story 114. Some come here to sit and think. Some come here to sit and stink. Some come here to scratch their arms. And I come here to write poetry on the walls. I kid you not, remember this from more than 40 years ago, when I was an impressionable preteen. Story 115. On the urinals, I saw a sign that said, "Please do not throw cigarette butts into the urinals," which is fine, but someone had written below, "It makes the urinal cakes taste funny." Story 116. My favorite is this poem. Some come here to sit and think, while others come just to sit and think, but I come here to scratch my hands and read the writings on the walls. Story 117. In one of the most violent and in some ways unpleasant bars of Minnesota, I saw this. Why do men create gods with the personalities of spoiled adolescents? Story 118. Thank you. I have been saving these since 1991 when I saw them. It's like I trained for this moment all my life. Visiting Virginia Tech, a friend took me to a dive bar where I found handwriting 1. I messed up your mother. Handwriting 2. Go home, Dad. You're drunk. I laughed so hard I could not urinate properly. I added, I cannot urinate under these conditions. Then on the condom machine, do not buy this gum. It tastes like rubber. The next week I had returned to Old Dominion University, and the condom machine at one of our dive bars read, do not buy this rubber. It tastes like gum. Story 119. In my university science library, if you have to urinate while studying, do not wait for a good stopping point, just go. A future doctor, hopefully. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.